Good Tavach, Shavua Tov, a good week. We begin a new week. We begin with new life from the Chassidus that we learn together. Straight there. There. We are learning and preparing for Yud Shvat. Yud Shvat, the 10th day of the month of Shvat, the day that our dear Rebbe became Rebbe. Previous Rebbe passed away in 1950. 75 years we're celebrating. Oh, thank you. 75 years we're celebrating. Unbelievable. Since Yud Shvat. So, in the discourse that the previous Rebbe gave out on the day of his passing, actually, it was his discourse, and the Rebbe bases his teachings on the previous Rebbe's teachings. So, we gave a metaphor of a great sage teaching a student, truly great sage, a Rebbe. And to bring it down to the level that the student should appreciate, the great sage has to put in the back burner the depth of the awareness, the knowledge, the understanding as of the particular teachings. All right. In order to contract upon that idea, bring it down to the level of the student. So the same thing as God in creation, or Ein Sof, the infinite light of God that is responsible for creation. That God is the source of everything in creation. He contracts upon that light in a manner that he doesn't remove himself, but in a manner that creation doesn't feel his presence, doesn't feel his presence. But yet knows and is aware that there is a presence of God. We feel that we have vitality, and we know that the vitality comes from somewhere. Unless we become so full of ourselves, and we are like Pharaoh, who feels that, he is the source of his own creation, and he is the source of creation of the world. Right? God can conceal himself in such a manner that a person might feel that way. The example for that would be is that, you did something and you were successful, and you take full credit rather than crediting God that gave you the vitality, gave you the life to be able to do it, gave you the wisdom and everything that comes with the success. My success, I did it, I accomplished. Now, doesn't mean that we didn't. Of course, we have to do our part, right? But we recognize that we are not self-created, and therefore we know that we have vitality that's outside of us. One second, I think it's a problem here. No, we're good. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hakol v'barei.
Amen. Amen.
L'chaim l'chaim bracha. So when it comes to creation, so we don't feel that God, the core essence of God, the infinite of God is creating me. God hides that. But we do sense that we have some kind of vitality that is um, that is coming from above. And that's the metaphor of the student who's gaining wisdom from the sage. The fact that the sage is contracting upon an idea to bring it down to the level of the student that the student can appreciate, ultimately it's to reveal. Its ultimate purpose of the sage is to reveal to the student a teaching. Now, from the sage's point of view, he hasn't reduced any of his knowledge. He just reduces it so that it can be received by the student. Same thing as with God. God in creation doesn't reduce anything by him. There's no, nothing is changed by God. As by the teacher, there's nothing that's been changed. Just to bring it down to the student, so he contracts for the student's sake. So the same thing God does, contract upon his infinite light. Not that we don't feel God's infinite light that is creating us, but the purpose is in order to reveal. Just as the teacher is trying to reveal wisdom and knowledge to the student, so likewise God is trying to reveal him to us through the contraction. Because without that, we, being finite individuals, would not be able to appreciate the infinite. So he contracts upon himself. Okay? Okay, with that, we're going to go into, that's from 1950, chapter 15, an overview of chapter 15 of the previous Rebbe's teachings. Now we're going to our Rebbe's teachings that was said in 1985. And I was there. To be honest, I don't remember the discourse, but this is from 1985. It begins, I have come to my garden, my sister, the bride. Right? This is from Shir Hashirim, the Song of Songs, right? From King Solomon. But what does it mean? So, Lagani to my garden. First of all, God views this world as a garden, not as a jungle. Even though there's plenty of things here that we could say that this world is a jungle, no doubt. But that's not how God views the world. He views it as a garden. And not only a garden, but a bridal chamber for my sister, the bride. To the place where God was originally. What does that mean? Maybe the place he was originally. Because the main place of God's presence, the Shekhinah as it's called, the divine presence, is down in this world. Right? In other words, it was in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve originally. But because of actions that were inappropriate, the Shekhinah, the divine presence of God, was removed from this world, first by Adam, and then consecutive generations, until finally, to the seventh heaven, it was removed. Then came 7 righteous individuals, beginning with Abraham, Avram Avinu. He was the first individual, and he brought down the divine presence of God from the 7th heaven to the 6th, Isaac to the 6th to the 5th, Jacob from 5th to the 4th, Joseph, and so on, until the 7th is Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, right? He's the 7th. And all 7ths are endeared. All 7ths are endeared, which, by the way, our teacher, the Rebbe, is the 7th generation from the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad. Alter Rebbe, who is the author of Tanya, right, which we will learn today and every day. The Alter Rebbe is the first generation. The Rebbe is the 7th generation. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, is the 7th generation from Abraham. And all 7s are endeared. What's endearing? Well, 7 is a complete cycle, right? We have 7 days of the week. Shabbos is the 7th day, the Sabbath. Endeared day, of course, right? What did Moshe Rabbeinu do? What did Moses do? He brought the divine presence into the physical world. In other words, the previous generations left it on some spiritual level, the presence of God. Moses brought it down into the physical world, right? So it continues, the Rebbe says that this is the avodah, this divine service of all the righteous in general, is to bring the presence of God into this world, which is interesting. Not to remove yourself from this world, not to try to find God in the spiritual realm, but to bring God into the material physical realm of this world. And that is the divine service of every single Jew. That's an obligation of every Jew. Now, someone's not Jewish, they don't have the obligation as a Jew does, but the notion is something that also important for those who aren't Jewish. But Moses, being the leader of the Jewish people, this is the mission that he brings to them. And the Amat Kulam Tzadikim, all, we're all righteous, and therefore we all have this obligation to bring the presence of God into this world. It's something that we deal at length in chapter 41 in Tanya. Now, where do you get the power for that? I mean, this world, right, could be a jungle. How do you make from a jungle a garden? A bridal chamber for the bride. Where does that power come from? Think about it for a moment. That's pretty awesome, pretty challenging, pretty difficult. Where does the power come for this? It comes from Moshe Rabbeinu, comes from Moses. And the Moses that there is in every generation, meaning the leader of the generation. That's where we get the power from. Even though ultimately all power comes from God, no question about it, right? L'chaim. Yet, to access that power, to reveal that power within ourselves, right? To be ultimately the real me. To be the real me, to effectively tap into everything that I have been given by God. That's the Moses of the generation. It gives us that strength. And by the way, the Moses in every generation is in every single one of us. So actually, we learn in chapter 42 in Tanya, based on the teachings of the Talmud, that is based on a verse in Deuteronomy that says, what does God ask from you? Only but to fear him. So the Talmud says, is that such a simple thing? The fear of God not meaning the fear of punishment, the fear of the presence of God, that God is present and real in our day-to-day, day-to-day, hour-to-hour, moment-to-moment living, that God is present. Well, isn't that a difficult thing? So the Talmud says, yeah, isn't that difficult? Yeah, but for Moses, it's not difficult. Yeah, but we're not asking about Moses. For him, it's not difficult. But this is something that is expected of every single Jew. So is that not difficult to achieve that? That you live, that God is truly present at all times? So from the teaching of the Talmud, that for Moses, it is easy, and yet we're not asking about Moses, we're asking about every single one of us. From here, the Alter Rebbe in Tanya explains, and the Rebbe brings down here in this discourse, yeah, for the Moses spark in me, it's easy. So we have a piece of Moses in us. And that piece in us that we are attuned to, then having the presence of God, that God's real, that God is not just a fantasy, that God isn't just, the old man in the sky with a long flowing white beard, that is the sugar daddy that gives me what I ask for, which most people, that's kind of a vision that they have, right? No, that's not what it means. It means I have a piece of Moses inside of me that allows me, that piece of Moses within me, just as for Moses, God was very present in his life, allows me to make God very present and real and authentic in my life. Not that God is standing over there and shaking his hand. Oh, don't do that. No. And he's looking and gazing and giving us inner strength to be able to accomplish and be who we need to be. Masters over ourselves, not over others, but ourselves, of our thought, speech, and action. And to actually, even in a sense more, that through that empowerment to give us the capability that we can make a dwelling place for God in this world, to make God dwell in not just through me because I have a sense of presence of God, but through everything that I'm engaged in, that I create that presence in a palpable way in this world. Now, how was it palpable that Moses brought what he brought to the people then? Was to make a mishkan. A mishkan, we translate as tabernacle. It means a home for God. We make a home for God. So then it was a physical home. And so was the holy temple, the two holy temples were physical homes. So we're making in the physical world a place for God's presence, right? What that means in me, that I make a home for God within me, is that I am able to transform darkness into light. My darkness, right? And the darkness that I engage in the world around me, because there's a lot of darkness in this world, and we engage in that darkness. When we engage in that darkness, what we want to do from that darkness is to transform it into the light of God. And that's the idea of the Krashi HaMishkan, the planks that make the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the home for God. In a physical sense, it represents what it is in spiritual sense. In a physical sense, they took planks and put up those planks, and that created a space for the Holy of Holies and the Holies. In the Holies, you had the candelabra, you had the golden altar, you had the shulchan, the table with the bread on it. And then the Holy of Holies, you of course had the Ark of the Covenant. So that space was created by the planks that were put up and create that space, which is this divine presence of God. So to create that, so the word, then that's the physical idea. What is the spiritual idea behind this is that kroshim, which is planks, those letters spell sheker. Sheker means a lie. The lie of the world, right? Or my lies, right? What do I have to do? I have to make it into a keresh, into a plank that becomes a home for God. I have to transform the lie of the world, right? The lie of the world is that I want to glorify myself. I want to glorify my achievements. I have to transform that and to glorify not myself, but the godliness that there is within me, the godliness within the world, God's presence. So we take from the lie of the world, and our job is to transform it into a plank, a space that we create that becomes God's presence. And we make a home for God in this world. That's our job. That was the first chapter of the discourse. God willing, we will continue with much more. We'll see you soon by Chumash and Rashi.